A single tree stands in an orchard producing fruit that should not exist together. 40 different fruits, ripening on one trunk, break the rules modern agriculture depends on. Peaches swell beside plums, cherries harden while apricots soften. Nectarines arrive weeks after branches that already finished their cycle. This isn't genetic engineering. It's older than modern farming, and the system that feeds you quietly made sure trees like this almost disappeared, because no one ever announced it. There was no moment where the USDA said, "Destroy these trees." Instead, they changed one thing and let everything else collapse on its own. They decided which fruit mattered. In the early 1900s, the United States was full of orchards that didn't look anything like today. Thousands of fruit varieties, different colors, different seasons, different tastes, no two orchards identical. Then, slowly, that diversity started becoming a problem. Not for farmers, for the system forming around them. Railroads expanded, refrigeration improved, cities grew further from farms, and suddenly, fruit wasn't just food anymore. It was a product that had to travel. That single shift rewrote everything, because fruit that tastes incredible for 3 days, but bruises on the 4th, doesn't survive a 1,500-mile journey. Fruit that ripens unpredictably can't be harvested efficiently. Fruit that looks different doesn't sell well on shelves. So something subtle happened. Varieties weren't banned, they were labeled obsolete. And that word did the work of destruction without ever sounding like it. Once a fruit is called obsolete, farmers stop planting it, nurseries stop selling it, schools stop teaching it, and within a generation, it's gone, not destroyed. Erased by mid-century, tens of thousands of fruit varieties had vanished from American agriculture. Apples alone dropped from around 17,000 to a fraction of that. That's not optimization. That's a mass disappearance. And buried inside that disappearance was something else the system no longer needed. A skill, grafting. For thousands of years, farmers didn't rely on seeds to preserve fruit. They built trees. They cut living branches from one variety and fused them onto another. If one thin layer aligned perfectly, the two became one organism. Miss it, and the branch dies. Get it right, and you could grow multiple varieties from a single tree. That's how diversity survived. Not in fields, in knowledge. And knowledge is easier to erase than trees, because you don't have to destroy it. You just stop teaching it. By the time industrial agriculture matured, grafting hadn't disappeared, it had become irrelevant. It was slower, harder, unpredictable, and worst of all, it made farmers less dependent. A farmer who can graft doesn't need identical crops, doesn't need to repurchase trees every cycle, doesn't need uniform systems. That doesn't scale well, so the system moved on without it. And trees like this quietly stopped existing until 2008. An orchard was about to be cleared. Not diseased, not failing, just in the way. Inside it were trees over a century old, varieties that no longer existed anywhere else. Once they were cut, there would be no way to bring them back. No backups, no seeds that would recreate them, no second chance. That's when one person stepped in, Sam Van Aken. Not a farmer, an artist, which is why he noticed something everyone else missed. This wasn't just an orchard, it was a disappearing archive. So instead of trying to save the land, he tried to save what was growing on it. He began grafting, one branch at a time, taking varieties from dying trees and attaching them to new ones. Most attempts failed. Branches rejected each other, connections dried out. Entire seasons of work disappeared in weeks, but slowly something held. A tree with a few varieties, then more, then dozens, until one tree carried 40 different fruits, not as an experiment, as a preservation system. And what that system reveals is where this story turns, because this tree doesn't behave like modern agriculture expects. It doesn't produce all at once, it produces in sequence. One branch ripens in July, another in August, another in September, Remember, instead of overwhelming abundance, it creates continuity, food over time, from one organism. That sounds inefficient until you realize what it replaces. Modern orchards produce one type of fruit for a few weeks. Then nothing. Everything depends on perfect timing, perfect weather, perfect conditions. And when those fail, everything fails at once. We've already seen this. The banana you see in every store, the Cavendish, is genetically identical worldwide. One fungus is now spreading across continents. If it succeeds, that banana disappears. This isn't hypothetical. It's already happened before. A previous global banana variety was wiped out the exact same way. Different name, same system, same result. Because when you remove diversity, you remove resilience. And that was the trade. Uniformity made food easier to ship, but made it easier to lose. This tree reverses that trade. If one branch fails, others continue. If one variety struggles, another adapts. It's not perfect, but it doesn't collapse all at once. And that's what was lost. Not just flavors, not just varieties, a way of building systems that could survive failure. Today, trees like this are coming back, not because the system changed, because people stepped outside it. Small growers, communities, individuals relearning what was almost erased, not scaling it, protecting it, quietly, which brings the question back. Why did the USDA try to destroy every specimen? They didn't. They did something far more effective. They built a system where those specimens could not survive. And once that system took over, diversity didn't need to be removed. It removed itself, which means this tree, 40 different fruits on one trunk, isn't just unusual. It's evidence that the system we depend on was built by cutting away the very thing that made it stable, and now survives on what little of it is left.